All right. Take a look at, yesterday we were speaking about the bribes. So we're in Perek Tes Zayin Pasuk Chaf. Page 10. Oh, page 1026. Thank you. No, not 1026. 1024 still. 1024. Right at the beginning. Again, Shoftim v'Shoftim tita l'cha b'chol sherecha asher Hashem l'kach l'zach l'shvatecha v'Shoftu asam Mishpat Tzedakah. So, right, I had asked you yesterday why it says Mishpat Tzedakah, you should judge a righteous judgment. Obviously, it should be a righteous judgment. Remember the question I forgot to answer yesterday? I didn't have an answer for it. You can move closer if you guys want. You can move closer. So there the answer is that this is not telling you what you should do. It's saying what's going to happen. Because, remember yesterday we were speaking about the court system, the Torah court system, because there are courts in every city, so there isn't backlog, the judges aren't rushed. You can do everything in a relaxed manner. You do it, you move it, but you're not rushed because there's a backlog of cases. Therefore, by definition, you're going to end up with Mishpat Tzedakah. You're going to end up with correct judgments, as opposed to V'Shoftu Asam. It's not telling you, well, judge righteously. Obviously, you should judge righteously, justly. It's telling you that because of the way we have a system of courts and judges and what do you call it? So then you're going to judge. You're going to judge honestly. Number one. Then it says Lo Sata Mishpat. Don't incline. Don't distort the judgment. Lo Sakir Panim. Don't play favorites. Tzedek, tzedek, tirdof. You must pursue justice. You must pursue justice. And Aaron, if I could ask you not to, if you finish outside, because it's not covered up Torah. Tzedek, tzedek, tirdof. Now the obvious question here is why it says tzedek, tzedek twice. It says righteousness, right? Justice you must pursue. Now there are many different explanations over here. So the first is that according to some of Farshim, I think the Medrash, it says it's referring to tzedakah. Referring to the word tzedek comes from tzedakah, justice, tzedakah, giving. And tzedek tirdof means you should pursue tzedakah. Don't wait for it to come to you necessarily. You don't have to wait until people come to ask you for money. If you have money, try to find somebody to give it to. You don't have to wait. Oh, well, I'll keep it in my pocket until somebody asks me for it, until somebody solicits it. If you have what he calls it, go try to find somebody. Go try to find somebody to give it to. That's if you understand it as tzedakah. But when it's talking about justice, so then there's several different ideas here. Idea number one is a famous debate. It wasn't a debate, it was a conversation that goes back to the beginning of the state of Israel. And Ben Gurion, who was the first prime minister of Israel, and unfortunately was virulently anti-religious, and constantly was provoking and antagonizing the religious community in Israel. Had actually been here first. They'd been here since the mid-1800s, the Talmidim of the Vilna Gaon. And so there was a clash. There was obviously a clash. And the leader of the Jewish people in the 1950s was the Chazon Ish. And the Chazon Ish, every time Ben Gurion wanted to do something like inscribe women into the, what's it called? What's it called? To inscribe? Not inscribe. Inscript women into the army, and people are like, no, the Chazon Ish said that. Every time we want to do the Chazon Ish said the Chazon Ish. Yeah, who's the Chazon Ish already? Chazon Ish is a little old man living in Bnei Brak, who all the frum Jews are obeying, the doing what the Chazon Ish. Finally, Ben Gurion said, I'm going to go speak to the Chazon Ish. I want to go talk to the Chazon Ish. So they came to the Chazon Ish and said, Ben Gurion wants to see you, wants to speak to you. Can he come speak to you? The Chazon Ish says, my door is open to everybody. The Stipler was there at the time. And Stipler and the Chazon Ish used to live together in the same. Chazon Ish was his brother-in-law. They shared a home. The Stipler, Chaim Kanievsky's father.
What do you think, Stipler?
The Stipler, he was from a city in Europe called Hornistipel. So they called him the Stipler. So he was Reb Chaim Kanievsky's father. So the Stipler left the house, and the Chazon Ish took off his glasses because there's a halacha, you're not allowed to look at the face of a Rasha. So he took off his glasses. And then Ben Gurion came in with his entourage to the Chazon Ish, and they've got this clash. So Ben Gurion said to the Chazon Ish, okay, how are we going to work this out? Something's got to give over here. We got the secular and you got the religious, and we got a constant, we're at loggerheads constantly. What are we going to do? So Chazon Ish quoted a Gemara to Ben Gurion. The Gemara is in Sanhedrin Daf Lamed Beis. And the Gemara in Sanhedrin quotes this pasuk, Tzedek Tzedek Tirdof. The Gemara says there are two types of tzedek, there are two types of justice. A remarkable piece of Gemara that the Chazon Ish, you see the wisdom, he had all of Shas, and he picked this one line to say to Ben Gurion. The Gemara says tzedek tzedek tirdof. The word tzedek tells you, because the Torah could have just said tzedek tirdof, pursue righteousness, right? Pursue justice. Why does it say justice you should pursue? So, the Gemara there says there are two types of justice. There are certain times where, if you have a situation where you have one animal and the animal is moving, you have another animal moving in the other direction. Whoever gets there first, he goes through. What happens if two animals, as the Gemara uses the example, the Gemara uses the example of two camels that are on a very narrow path. And they're heading towards each other. Now what's supposed to happen? Right? What's supposed to happen in that situation? Or if there are two boats and they're heading towards each other and there's only room for one of them to pass. What's supposed to happen? So there are two possibilities. Possibility number one is a compromise. Compromise, well, it's actually possibility number two. If all else is equal, so draw lots. That's possibility number two. Sorry. Possibility. No, I'm good. I got vodka. Possibility number two is to draw lots. That's if all else is equal. But then the Chazon Ish said, what's possibility number one? Well, if one of the camels is loaded with a burden, one camel is carrying a load, and the other one is not carrying a load, so the one who does not have the load should step aside and let the one with the load pass. The one who's carrying the load has the right of way. If there are two boats in the harbor, Kol Olam Gvar, right? There are two boats in the harbor, and one boat is loaded with merchandise and the other one is empty. So the one that's empty should move aside so the other one should pass through. That's if one's loaded and one's not loaded. If all else is equal, so then you draw lots. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Choose it out. So Chazon Ish said to the Ben Gurion, your wagon is empty. Your wagon is empty. Our wagon's been loaded for 2,000 years. Right? You have to give way for us. That's what Chazon Ish said to Ben Gurion. Ben Gurion was very flustered. And Ben Gurion just why we're not empty. We're not empty. We're not empty, which means you are. Right? That was the Gemara. So the Gemara here, tzedek tirdof, means that there are certain times in court where they try to broker a compromise. Try to compromise. There are other times where you got to rule whatever the halacha is. And in Beis Din, the halacha is if two guys come to the Beis Din, you guys are fighting over something, before we know what the halacha is, or which way even the halacha is going to go, we are allowed, the Beis Din's allowed to offer, hey guys, maybe you want to compromise? Maybe you want to compromise? Okay? That we're allowed to do that. Once the judges know, they get a sense which way things are really going to go over here, they cannot offer a compromise. Then you have to paskin the halacha. The paskin the halacha the way it is. Dovid HaMelech, not only that, the Gemara says openly, a rich man and a poor man come to Beis Din. A wealthy man, a prominent man, and a poor man. They both come to Beis Din. They both come to court. So there, you might be tempted, and under those circumstances, you know what? The rich guy is an important guy in the community. Will rule in his favor, and then we'll have the poor guy pay him. Then after court, I'll go over to the poor guy and we'll compensate the poor guy because we don't want to embarrass the rich guy because he's an important guy in the community. You're not allowed to do that. And you're not allowed to do the other. You're not allowed to rule in favor of the poor man because, well, if he's a poor guy, he's down and out, so we'll rule in his favor and make the rich guy pay him because, after all, he's a poor guy. We got to think, you cannot distort the judge. Once you know what the halacha is, you have to rule the halacha. And therefore, that says about Dovid HaMelech, when Dovid HaMelech would rule in court cases, he would rule against the poor man. if the poor man was guilty or owed the money, he would rule again. But then after the court case, Dovid HaMelech would compensate the poor man from his own pocket. That was tzedakah. So first he did justice, he did mishpat, he carried out the law, and then after carrying out the law, okay, case is over. Now he would give him he would compensate him from his pocket. That you're allowed to do. But you cannot change the ruling of the law in order because, well, we feel bad for him, we feel bad for him, then we'll distort the law. It's not our law to tamper with once we know what the halacha is. But if you could get people to compromise, which isn't so easy in life, by the way, if you could get, there's a famous story. A guy comes to the Rav. A butcher comes to the Rav, and he says to the Rav, he shechted a cow, and he's not sure if the cow is kosher or not. So the Rav takes a look at the cow, and he says the cow's treif. It's going to cost the guy 500 rubles now because the cow is treif. It's got a hole in the lung, whatever it is. The guy says, okay, listen, that's the halacha. That's the halacha. Okay, the guy goes home. A couple of days later, a guy comes to Beis Din, and he's got litigation with another guy over 50 rubles. And the judge paskins in favor of the other guy. And this guy, but what? How can you paskin? I'm the guy. What's he getting so upset about? This is 50. For 500 rubles, he accepted it. He was fine with 500 rubles. Whatever the rabbi said, he's fine. Good, okay. That's the halacha. I lose 500. But for 50 rubles, now he flies off. Why? What's the difference? What's the added factor here? There's one factor. What's the added factor? The other guy. The other guy. When it's me and the cow, so the halacha is halacha. But it's you! I mean, I'm going to lose to you. No, that's what's really about. So getting a compromise, all right. All right, as long as he didn't win. That's human nature. That's human nature. It's a very interesting, and it's true, by the way. It's true, by the way. As long as there's nobody on the other end, I'm fine. Once there's somebody else, it's no longer me. I want to tell you guys something. When my father was nifter, we're going back about 6-7 years ago, so I had to say Kaddish. Now, if you ever been in shul where two guys want to daven for the Yomud or say Kaddish, or they want to be for what he calls, the things sometimes get a little bit, what do you call it? People, yes, it could get heated. All the Shem Shemaim, of course. So after my father, we were sitting Shiva, and I have two brothers, and we decided right then that come what, we are not going to fight in shul for the Yomud. If somebody else wants it, we're going to give them the Yomud. Number one, because that's really the proper thing to do. And number two, because if our father was alive and saw us fighting over the Yomud, he would have banged all our heads together. So we decided right away. And so in the course of the year that I was saying Kaddish and had tried daven for the Yomud, if I ever saw somebody who wanted the Yomud, I gave him the Yomud. One time I was at Ma'ariv, and I went to the shul for Ma'ariv, and I was sitting right about, here was the Yomud over here. Where's the Yomud over here? Here's the Stender, and I'm sitting mamish right over here, waiting for Ma'ariv to start. About 30 seconds before Ma'ariv, as I'm sitting there waiting to get up, and I'm going to get up and I'm going to daven Hurachu. I'm sitting there, about 30 seconds before Ma'ariv, this guy walks right past me. He didn't see me. He walked right past me. He went up to the Ma'ariv. He went up and he took the Yomud. And I'm sitting there like, I'm getting heated. And I said to myself, now 1 second. Why am I really upset? I'm upset. Now, why am I upset? Am I upset because I'm going to miss out on the spiritual benefits for my father's neshama? Or I'm upset because, hey, it's me, and now it's you. And once I came to the conclusion that that's what was really upsetting me, so I just went to my seat and sat down. Because what's really bothering me? I'm not that spiritual giant that I'm so concerned about the Ma'ariv. It's more like, That's what's bothering me. Once that's the point. So when somebody else in litigation, so then the halacha is they could broker a compromise, but not when they know what the halacha is. Once you know what the halacha is, they have to what's called chotchim esadin. They have to cut it the way it meant to be cut. Okay, number one. Number two, somebody had a question. Itamar, you had a question before?
Yeah, so you said it says justice twice, correct?
Right.
So I was just asking the story you brought forth about Dovid HaMelech, how he would create a judgment, then afterwards, independent of that, he would go and give money to the poor person. Is that the second?
No, that's based on a different pasuk. It says that Dovid was osa mishpat u'tzedakah l'chol amo. He did mishpat and tzedakah. He did, in the Nach, it says he did mishpat, which is judgment, and he did tzedakah afterwards. This is tzedek tirdof, that there are two types of justice. There's one justice which is telling you this is the ruling, and there's another type of justice which is telling you make a compromise. But even making a compromise is only under certain circumstances. Okay, now there's another idea here, and this is very, very important. The other idea is tzedek tirdof. The commentaries say you must pursue justice. Tzedek tirdof. You must pursue justice through just means. That means don't arrive at justice through unjust means. And this applies in many cases, in many areas of life. That in Judaism, the ends do not just the ends. How does it work? The means. The ends do not justify the means. That means our approach in life, in any area of Judaism, for example, there are no Jewish Robin Hoods. Right? What did Robin Hood do? Robin Hood, he stole, Robin Hood stole from the rich and gave to the poor. Oh, what a mitzvah, right? Then there's Dennis Moore. You know Dennis Moore is? You never heard of Dennis Moore? Oh, you never heard of Dennis Moore? Didn't you guys ever see Monty Python? Yeah. Oh, remember Dennis Moore? Dennis Moore, riding through the night. You never saw Dennis Moore? Dennis Moore used to rob from the poor and give to the rich. Right? That was a Monty Python guy, right? So profound, absolutely profound. So Robin Hood, the idea, or what we would call Ruvain Hood, right? There are no Ruvain Hoods in Judaism. Can't rob from the rich and give to the poor. The means have to be kosher. And if you haven't got kosher means, then that's it. So you're not going to have the ends. So a person can't go and try to arrive at a certain conclusion, at a certain halachic, what do you call it? You want to accomplish something, it's got to be accomplished in a kosher manner. You can't go, maybe they're chumashim, maybe for the gentleman who walked in, maybe bring chumashim something. We're on page 1024. You can't, everything has to be, the means have to be kosher. So for example, you may have this in the world of kiruv. In the world of kiruv, where a person may compromise religious principles for the sake of making people religious, which happens all the time. For example, this is a very big question. You invite somebody to your house for Shabbos, but you know they're going to drive. Also, that you can teach them all about Shabbos, about keeping Shabbos. So you'll have them desecrate Shabbos so that you can teach them Shabbos. Not so simple. Not only not so simple. Most poskim say you can't do that. How would you know? Because they live 15 miles away and they've never kept Shabbos in their life, and they're not going to walk, right? And you invite them for Friday night. You know for a fact that they're going to drive. Or you're going to get somebody. You're going to invite somebody into Yiddishkeit. And the guy says, "Well, I'm not really interested." You say, "Come to my house. We'll do some cocaine, and then I'll teach you about Yiddishkeit." Right? So that you can't do. Right? You can't even if you keep Shabbos, I'll get you. I'll hook you up. You can't do that. Right? That's the ends do not justify the means. The means have to be kosher. So if a person understands this is not only and as I say, in any other area, you can't steal. If you're gonna make money, let's say I want to give tzedakah. So I decide to cheat the Internal Revenue Service, the IRS. I don't report my income tax. And my rationalization is, well, better that it should go to the yeshiva than it should go to the government. Right? No good. You can't cheat for the good of the cause. Right? It's got to be kosher. That's tzedek tirdof. That means in court you can't resort. I know a case where a certain rabbi who he was doing a convert. There was a girl. There's a non-Jewish girl, and she wanted to convert to marry the Jewish guy. And the halacha is that they can't. He told her you can't convert for the sake of marriage. Again, each individual case has to be. But as a general rule, you can't convert somebody because they want to marry somebody else. Okay, nowadays there are different situations. This was the situation that happened. So the rabbi said, "I'll convert you, but you should know that if I can't convert you, if you're going to marry him, I can't convert you." She said, "I don't care. I'm interested in Yiddishkeit. I'm genuine." And by the way, there have been many cases like that where the Jewish doctor, the Jewish guy, meets a non-Jewish girl, and she goes and converts. And once she converts, he's not firm enough for her. She won't marry him. That happens. That happened many times. And also, she converts, and once she converts, she decides to do it right. So she converts and she becomes he's secular, but he's Jewish, and his parents are pressuring her. Go, you want to marry a non-Jewish girl? Make sure she converts. So she goes through a conversion. She becomes completely religious. Says, I'm not marrying him. He's not frum enough for me. Right? It happens. All right. So this rabbi had this couple, and the girl was converted. And he had to be. Now the halakha is he has to be convinced that she's sincere about it, and she's not converting for the sake of marrying this guy. Once she converts, she could marry him, if that wasn't her motivation. So this rabbi, he told the story about himself. He said, he converted her. He went through a whole process, and she seemed very sincere to him, but he just wasn't sure. He just wasn't sure what's really. So finally, right before he finishes the conversion, he says, okay, I can only convert you, but right now you have to pick up the phone and you have to call him and call David and tell him that you're going to convert, but once you convert, you can't marry him. That's the only way I'll know that you're not doing it for that. She said, okay, if that's what it takes, then I won't be able to marry him. And she picks up the phone and she calls up. She says, I'm not going to be able to marry her. She was crying. He was crying. The rabbi was crying. And once she finished the phone call, he said, okay, now you can marry him. So then he said that his own Rosh Yeshiva, his Rav, one of the Gedolei Ador, said to him, you shouldn't have done that. That was not part of the requirement. You did it. You felt that you need to do that in order to get at the proper result. That wasn't appropriate. You went too far. The halacha does not require it. Very interesting. So the Torah, what's that?
Did she end up marrying him?
Did she end up marrying? Yeah, why? We'll make a movie out of it. Ooh, yeah. So at the end of the day, what do you call it? That's what the Torah is telling you. The ends, I think so. The ends don't justify the means. The ends don't justify the means. That's tzedek trudah. If you want to get to justice, but only through just means. You can't do things which are illegal. You can't do things which are dodgy, as the English say, in order to get to those ends. Okay, now take a look. Take a look at Pasuk Chaf Aleph. Lo sita lecha ashera kol eitz, eitzel mizbach Hashem Elokecha asher ta'aseh lach. So an Asherah is a tree that the idol worshippers worshipped, and somehow they felt that the tree brings some sort of influence from the idols. And the Torah says that you're not allowed to plant a tree as an Asherah, and you're not allowed to plant any trees by the altar, because the idol worshippers did that as well. They planted trees by the altar as well. Now, the next one says, V'losokim lecha matzeva. Now, this is fascinating, gentlemen. Stay with this. Don't make a pillar. How does the article translate it? A pillar? I don't like a pillar. A pillar just sounds like a pillar. The reason they translate as a pillar, it's a one stone altar. Don't make a one stone altar. Asher sanei Hashem Elokech, which Hashem hates. Now look at Rashi for a second. Look at Rashi. It's in the left column. 6 lines from the top. Below sakim lechamatze. If you find it, please show the person next to you. Don't make it one stone pillar. One stone altar. Says Rashi, matzeves even achas. It's an altar of one stone. Lahakriv olav aleha. Afilu l'shamayim. Even to bring offerings to God, you're not allowed to use a one stone altar. Asher soneh, which Hashem hates. Mizbeach avonim u'mizbeach adom atziv lasos. Hashem commanded to make an altar that's made up of many stones, and inside the hollow area is filled with dirt. Ve'ezeh soneh. But a one stone altar God hates. Why? What's wrong with a one stone altar? You're devoting yourself to God. Ki chok haisa liknanim. That was one of the statutes of the Canaanites, which they were idol worshippers. Now, then Rashi says something very interesting. Even though the time of the forefathers, they did use matzevas, they did use one stone pillars, altars. Achshav Seneah. Now Hashem hates it. After the Torah was given, Hashem does not want it. He rejects that. He rejects a one stone altar. What's the difference if I make an altar out of one stone, or if I make an altar out of many stones? Oh, I put many stones together. That's good. That's a good altar. I take one stone and make a pillar, an altar. I took one big boulder and made an altar out of it. No good. Hashem hates it. Not only Hashem hates it, at one time in history, Hashem was beloved. When Avram Avinu used it, it was fine. Torah was given. Okay, no more. The Canaanites do that. We don't want that. Why the Canaanites were doing it at the time of Avraham Avinu also. So what's the difference between a one-stone altar and a many-stoned altar? So it's very fascinating. Rav Hirsch says that, first of all, in the time before the Torah was given, what was the struggle of mankind? What was the struggle of mankind? Just to recognize there's a God. So how do you pay tribute to a God? How do you pay tribute to the fact that there's a God? You take one stone out of nature. Take one stone. Who created it? God did. And you bring an offering, you sacrifice to God on one stone. So then you're acknowledging the fact that God created the world, God created nature, the natural world. That, if you get there, that's great. But once the Torah is given, a Torah is given, we know there's a God. What's our job in life once the Torah is given? Once the Torah is given, God is to grow. Oh, now we understand. What's the difference between a one-stone altar and an altar of many stones? A one-stone altar is finished. That's it. There's nothing to add on to it. This is what it is. There's no growth. A mizbeach that's made of many stones, well, if it's made of many stones, you could always add on more stones. There's potential for growth on a mizbeach, on an altar. That's our job after the Torah was given. After the Torah is given, there's no such thing as remaining stationary. Once the Torah is given, our job is to grow. Before the Torah was given, we're just happy that people don't deny the existence of God. Here's a stone, we recognize that God created the world. But that's only up until Matan Torah. That's only until the Torah was given. Once the Torah is given, so now the Jew has to grow. You know where we put a stone, gentlemen? Where do you put one stone? In what's called a matzeva. You know where you put a matzeva? Where?
On a grave.
On a grave, that's right. You put it on a grave. Why? It fits exactly what we're saying. Why do you put it on a grave? There's no more growth. That's it. Game over. Game over. When a person's got a stone, there's one stone on there. The one what do you call it? One matzeva. Because there's no growth once a person dies. A person can only accomplish this wrong. You heard the story. This guy's driving with his fiancée. The couple gets engaged, and the girl says to the guy, I'd like a really nice stone. Yeah, like a really big stone. You're like a really, really big stone. And he's driving, she's talking about this big stone. The guy's driving, and all of a sudden he pulls up right alongside a cemetery, and he points, he says, okay, take any stone you want. Right? That's a stone. That's a big stone. That means there's no more growth. You're finished. That's a matzeva. That's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu despises. That a person has to know that there isn't a finish line in Judaism. My wife always says there is a finish line. The finish line is when a person is 6 feet under. That's the finish line. Up until that point, we're not finished. Up until that point, we're meant to be growing. That's the difference between a matzeva and an altar. Now, there's another idea here. Take a look at the wording of the pasuk. V'lo sakim lecha matzeva. Commentaries take this slightly out of context, and they say like this. Literally, it means don't make for yourself a stone altar, a one-stone altar. But the other mefarshim say, "V'lo sakim lecha matzeva," don't turn yourself into a one-stone altar. Matzeva means a set pattern. That a person shouldn't say, "This is my policy. This is who I am. This is my policy. I can't change." In many different areas of life. Nowadays they use an expression, "I have anger." He has anger. You ever hear that expression? He needs to go to therapy because he has anger. He doesn't have anger. He has a bad trait of getting angry, and he needs to work on it. Anger is an urge, like anything else. And like all urges, they have to be controlled. Oh, no. You know what? When a guy says, "Oh, I have anger," I have anger just means I'm too lazy to work on it. It's like I say, "I have shoplifting." Right? I have shoplifting. I like taking things off of shelves. No, it's not my fault. I have shoplifting. Right? I have, right? I have alcohol. It's not my fault. I drink a lot of alcohol. I have alcohol. What do you mean I have? You have anger. And I have anger. I get called, so that people call me up when they want to check out for a boy for a shidduch. So a lady calls me up, "Hi, can you tell me about this boy?" Well, does he get angry? I say, "Yeah, of course, don't you?" It's my standard response. They ask me about a boy. The boy, check it out about a boy for their daughter. Does he get angry? I say, "Yeah, don't you?" That's like I usually silence on the other end of the phone. Like, what? I said, "Well, do you know anybody that doesn't get angry? You know anybody that doesn't get angry?" Well, are you asking me, is he the type of guy who will throw a chair when he gets angry? No. As a matter of fact, I've never even seen him angry. Will he get angry? I'm sure he will. Just tell your daughter not to tick him off too bad. All right? But I'm sure he's going to get angry. Who doesn't? You know anybody in the world who never got angry? Of course they get angry. Some people get angry and they're quiet. Some people get angry and they throw a chair. When my wife used to get angry at me, she'd just give me a silent treatment. I've married 40 years. She's yelled at me 3 times in 40 years. 3 times in 40 years she's yelled at me. All the other times, she's been upset with me many hundreds of times. She just give me the silent treatment. That's worse. That's torture. It hasn't happened in a long time because the last few years I've become a tzaddik. But in the early days, she'd give me the silent treatment. When we were first married, also she'd turn me off, and I would just follow her around the house. Please talk to me. Please talk to me. Just like that. Now, some people get angry. Of course, people go. You know anybody doesn't get angry? You know anybody doesn't get angry? Of course, people get angry. So I have anger. You don't have anger. You got a bad midah. Work on it. I'll get you 1 second. Torah is telling you, Lo sasa l'cha matzeva. Don't turn yourself into a pillar. Don't tell yourself, this is my policy. This is my policy. There's certain people there. We have a policy. We don't answer the door while there's supper. Guy's knocking on the door. Maybe he's collecting for an important. We have a policy. We don't answer. Well, in Stone they had that policy also. A policy? What do you mean you have a policy? Maybe your policy is wrong. Your policy is wrong. Just because you call it a policy doesn't mean you also have an insurance policy, right? Who says who says your policy is correct? So change your policy. Guy knocks on the door. Guy knocks on the door, and it's from family. So the husband gets up. He answers the door. He's in the middle of supper. He answers the door. And he invites the guy in. Guy's collecting for some important cause. He invites the guy in, sits with the guy for 15, 20 minutes, writes him out a nice check, and the guy leaves. So his wife says to him, Chaim, why, you were in the middle of eating supper. Why'd you get up? He says, listen, I know that there's a halacha you can't interrupt in the middle of saying Kriya Shema. And there's a halacha that you can't interrupt in the middle of Shemon Esrei. I don't know any halacha that says you can't interrupt your supper in order to go help a Jew who needs help. I never heard of such a halacha. Right? Well, that's our policy. So your policy may be wrong. So change your policy. It applies to approaches to life as well. And this is my approach to life. And did you ever meet a guy? Never met a guy, gentlemen, if you haven't met him, you will meet him. At some point, I can almost guarantee you, as much as anything it can be guaranteed in this uncertain world, at some point or other, you're going to meet an old man who tells you why he's not religious. Did you ever meet that guy in shul? You're waiting to daven mincha, the guy comes in, he sees you. You know why I ain't religious? I'll tell you why I ain't religious. You know, when I was a little boy, I was at Cheder. And I was in Cheder, and I saw the rabbi in Cheder, and he hit one of the boys in Cheder, and I says to myself, Max, if that's how a rabbi behaves, I can't be religious. You never met that guy? They're all over the place. That means he made his life decision, with his rational life decision when he was 7 years old. Everybody saw people in the secular world hitting people too. That didn't change. You know, he should tell you, I ain't secular? I saw, why I ain't secular? Because I hit my wife and I was secular, so I decided not to be secular anymore. That he doesn't tell you. Or she hit me. Or my boss hit me. Or somebody hit somebody. That he doesn't tell you. That means that he's just too lazy to change. He's too lazy. The more a person is ingrained, a person is conditioned in following a certain path, and all of a sudden you're exposed to something which, hey, you know what? Maybe what I'm seeing is not correct. Now take a look for a second at Parshas Shmos. I'll get to you 1 second, Mayor, I haven't forgotten. Take a look at Parshas Shmos, gentlemen. Page 300. You never met those old guys who tell you why they're not religious? Oh, you will. Usually when you're trying to do something productive, they're killing time. On page 300, this is the episode of Moshe Rabbeinu seeing the burning bush. Moshe Rabbeinu sees the burning bush, page 300. And if you'll notice that Moshe Rabbeinu says it's 6 lines from the bottom. 6 lines from the bottom on page 300. So it says, Vayar v'hinei hasneh boer ba'esh. Moshe Rabbeinu sees the sneh is burning. V'hasneh nenu uko, but it's not consumed. Vayomer Moshe says, Asura na, I will veer off. Ve'era es hamara hagodol hazeh. I'll veer off and see this vision, whatever is happening here. Why does the Torah have to say, I'll veer off? Madua lo yivar hasneh. What do you mean you veer off? Why does it just say, I will go over and see this sneh? Page 300. Why does Moshe Rabbeinu just say, hey, you know what, I ought to go over and check this out? Why does the Torah say, I don't know if the article translates to that, I will turn aside now? What do you mean turn aside? And the implication is Moshe Rabbeinu was going this way, and all of a sudden he kind of knows that, oh, look at that. Well, let me turn aside and go see what's happening over there. Interesting, right? The Torah should just say, well, I see the burning bush, let me go over and check it out. The implication is that he had to kind of take a detour. Right? That's what it sounds like. So I have a friend of mine, Rabbi Menachem Goldberger in Baltimore, pointed out, sometimes in life we're following a certain path. You're walking down, you're following a certain path. We have a certain approach, develop a certain philosophy in life. And all of a sudden you notice something, hey, it might be a little different. One day you're walking past Ohr Somayach, and like, oh, wonder what's going on in that place. And you veer off and you take a detour and you walk in. The end. All right, the first step, the step towards the end. You walk in, hey, this is a little different than what I've understood life to be about. Yeah, says the Torah. Don't be a matseva. Sometimes you have to make a change. Sometimes you have to integrate the change, integrate new information. Not so simple. Not so simple. By the way, that's why many Bali Tshuva are much younger. Guys are 20, 25, maybe 30. When you're 20 or 25, to change what you've done and be willing to admit that the things that you've lived the way you've lived so far, I don't know if I've lived my life correctly, but it's been great. All right, now it's time to get serious. And when a guy's 70 years old, and he's got to say, my whole life has been a mistake, very difficult to go turn around, to admit to yourself that you've missed. It's very rare. That's why there are a handful of Israel Bali Tshuvas who became Bali Tshuvas in their 60s and 70s. But most are younger when they realize that, hey, you know what, this is different. That's why you don't find kids telling their parents not to be Bali Tshuvas. You find parents telling the kids not to be Bali Tshuvas. Not kids telling their parents, no, you're going to waste your life. It's the parents telling the kids, not the kids telling the parents. Isn't that true? Absolutely. Yeah, go ahead, Mary.
Well, now that we were in burning bush, there's Naul al-Raglech. Maybe you've heard about this one, like where it says that
Shal na'alechem el raglecha. The word na'al, it's also the same theme. A na'al is a lock.
Yes.
A man'ul in Hebrew is a lock. When God says to Moshe Rabbeinu, take your shoes off your feet, shal na'alecha me'al raglecha, a na'al, which is a shoe in Hebrew, but it's related to the word man'ul. Man'ul is a lock. The shoes are very firmly on our feet, right? They're locked onto our feet. So shal na'alecha me'al raglecha is also the same idea. Take the lock off. Sometimes we're locked into a certain thought pattern. Take the locks off. Take the restraint off. Maybe at least think about this. Absorb this. Think about it. I used to say to my kids, that those kids will start arguing with me because obviously if they're teenagers, they obviously are much smarter than me. So when they were teenagers, I'd say to them, they'd start arguing with me. I'd say, listen, you know what you think. You're talking, well, I think, you know what you think. Just maybe try to think about what I think. Listen to what I think. You know what you think. And you know, and I know what you think. Maybe think about what I think, because you don't know what I think. Right? Sometimes you have to, maybe open yourself up. Maybe somebody's got something to say. Maybe there's something that you did that in all your great wisdom as a teenager you overlooked in life. That could happen, right? Maybe with a teenager, nobody's as smart as a teenager. They got it all worked out. Only daddy's senile. Daddy doesn't know anything. The teenager. Somebody once said, the older I get, the smarter my father becomes. You ever hear that line? It's so true. The older I get, the smarter my father becomes. So sometimes in life, We're set in our ways. Listen, let's face it. We are set in our ways. We are a creature of habit. And the Torah says to you, listen, certain habits are not the end of the world. I have a habit of putting the toothbrush in my mouth and then squirting the toothpaste on like this while I like balancing the toothpaste. Right? I have a habit, when I pour myself a drink, I like picking up the bottle and seeing how high I could get without it splashing. Right? It's a habit. Right? Okay, it's not an avera. Right? It's not an avera. It's not the worst thing in the world. Right? That's a habit. The other things that may be habits, like talking in shul during davening, which is a habit that has to be broken. What's a guy going to say? I have talking. Like I have talk. Well, stop talking. I have stingy. That's why I don't give tzedakah. I have stingy. What kind of nonsense is that? I have anger. Ooh, so noble. So noble. Right? That's what the Torah is telling us. So I think nowadays they have the expression the comfort zone. Right? Okay. Move out of our comfort zone. It's hard for me. Comfort zone is just a fancy way of saying I'm lazy. I never said that to my father ever. Could you imagine? Gentlemen, in our generation, a little bit, maybe say to your father, "Oh, Dad, I can't. It's not in my comfort zone." Oh yeah, yeah. Not in your comfort zone. You got to get it right in the comfort zone, right? And what do you call that? I tell you, nowadays it's all psychology. Everything, right? Everything's psychology now. I tell you, when we were growing up, our fathers weren't psychologists. Our fathers were physical therapists, right? When we grew up, no psychology. Psychology nonsense. A couple of good session of physical therapy, and that took care of everything, right? Sure. Nowadays everything's psychology, adas, and all the fancy terms and what do you call it? So, Torah is saying, don't meya matseva. Don't turn yourself into a pillar, right? Person has to be willing to absorb and sometimes make the necessary adjustments. Yeah, Meir, go ahead.
Just out of curiosity, what's the meaning of the rock in Har Moriah? Like, is there
the rock on Har Moriah?
The central rock?
Oh, the Evan Shasiya. What the Evan Shasiya is literally, it means the stone that the world is, the foundation stone of the world. What the deeper meaning is, I don't know. That's all I know about it. It's when the Aron Kodesh was put on the Evan Shasiya. In the Beis Hamikdash, the Aron Kodesh was on the Evan Shasiya. Once the Aron Kodesh disappeared, that's all. The Kohen Gadol in the second Beis Hamikdash would sprinkle the blood. The Aron Kodesh wasn't there, only the Evan Shasiya, what's called the foundation stone. Okay, to be continued.